Hello guys, this is Jacob. So I'm going to address some of the statements made against my argument by Sir Sick, the social inequality crusader. So basically he did a video which he claims to have answered all of the questions I imposed on atheists. And I'm here today to tell you that he did no such thing. And I'm going to go ahead and make this video refuting everything that he said with basic logic and understanding of what I've learned throughout the years. So let's begin. Let's just get one thing straight. Saying I don't know is not an actual answer to any of the questions I imposed. Simply because you don't know the answer doesn't mean there isn't an answer. Secondly, simply talking as if you know what you're talking about doesn't make you right. Just saying because you almost had me convinced that you knew what you were talking about.
Well, morality is a human invention, so yes, absolutely, we can say it is wrong to us. We derive this kind of morality from the simple concept that we want to survive as a species. So if we think something would be bad if it happened to us, we also think we shouldn't do that to anyone else. Now, from the perspective of another species, would it be evil? No. They don't care what humans do to each other. Perhaps a being with equivalent intelligence would, if they had come to similar conclusions. Which is quite likely, at least from my perspective, as that kind of morality is a foundation for being able to build a society. If you don't have to worry about your neighbour killing you and taking all your stuff, you can focus on other things. And finally, on the universal scale, no, it's neither good nor evil, as we are a speck of dust riding a fleck of crap around a lit match floating at the edge of some gigantic cosmic warehouse. If we all disappeared tomorrow, there'd be no one to care.
Well, this would be true if all humans shared your belief that we should prioritize the survival of our species. Furthermore, not everyone thinks that doing good to others will lead to good things being done to them, and that isn't how reality always plays out. You assume that everyone shares your values, and many, like the nihilist, could care less because they see the chemical mechanisms behind our desires and beliefs as being pointless. Some people even believe that the human race is overpopulated and promote things like abortion. Our sense of morality isn't only a human thing. We're probably better able to articulate it than other animals, but we have witnessed other animals in the animal kingdom being moral or doing moral things. Dolphins, apes, and even dogs have all done things which are moral. To say that other animals don't have any perception of morality is quite presumptuous. Anyways, this is completely beside the point I was making. My point is that no matter what logic a person uses, killing an innocent human being without a justified reason is always wrong, and the only way that this can be always true is if morality is objective. You can't say morality is subjective and then hold others to an objective standard built upon your personal preferences.
For starters, let's separate those two different questions out. First off, well, yes, in the grand scheme of things, literally nothing matters. Within the scope of my existence, these things absolutely matter to me. My subjective feelings are just that, mine. So whether or not existence will probably ultimately lead to nothing is irrelevant to me. I live in this world now, and I want it to be as good as it can, so everyone can have a good, fulfilling life. Fact of the matter is, I will be long dead before the end of this universe. Also my children, and my children's children. So yeah, I'm going to make the best of what I've got right this second. As for judging God, from my perspective, God is an idea, something humans have used to explain things in the past, and more importantly to me, is used to justify acts that otherwise could not be justified. So I will criticize that idea when I feel it's necessary.
All feelings, even your so-called subjective ones, are molded by nature and your biology. We have similar pain receptors, a similar biology, and a similar environment. Therefore, your feelings can't entirely be subjective. This is why we all seek to live fulfilling lives. However, what fulfills my life may conflict with what fulfills yours. Your care of the here and now is pointless and meaningless to me and others because we can see the end of it. and the pointlessness to it all. If you look at the grand scope of things, the here and now has already passed. Your perception of anything only exists in your head. Secondly, you can indeed judge God or criticize religion, but it wouldn't be based on any objective grounds. So on what basis do you judge God? Is it by your own standards? And that's entirely okay and subjective for you to do so. It would be, however, purely illusory given the fact that your brain runs on mere chemical reactions.
Well, aside from the fact that as an atheist I'm not making the claim God doesn't exist, I'm saying I don't believe your claim that he does. If you want to get into this argument, you're the one making the claim that something exists without tangible evidence. I'm perfectly willing to accept God does exist if his existence can be shown to me. But so far, I've not been convinced. And that's fine. Also, no one with any scientific grounding is making the claim that the universe came from nothing. Not making the claim that it came from something either. As of yet, we don't actually know. But that doesn't mean slipping in a God claim is an appropriate response to that, because you don't know either. And that's okay too.
The thing is that you don't make any claim whatsoever. So how can an atheist claim that God doesn't exist? We may not be able to see what the universe came from, but we can make a logical deduction, and my deduction is simple. My deduction goes like this. The universe is made out of both space and time. We can see that by the Big Bang and the theory of thermodynamics that both space and time had a beginning, but without space and time, there is nothing. Can we at least agree that without space or time, there is nothing? Thermodynamics informs us that the universe, or rather the energy in the universe, has an end. So how can the universe have an end but no beginning? So you either believe that the universe just popped into existence, or that something or someone caused it to come into existence. So before the universe came into being, there was an eternity of nothingness without space-time. I can say this because if there is no space, where can you put matter? And if there is no time, at what time can you put it? So only something that is eternal, something that's not subject to space-time, could have sparked what is known as the Big Bang. That's where God comes in. God has always been known as a spirit. He is neither subject to space or time. He is an immaterial-like consciousness that can create matter and that has existed eternally. It's important to note that eternally is completely different from infinitely because infinity takes into account space-time.
You did two questions again, which is weird. We don't know where life came from exactly, but we can demonstrate that it could have formed naturally. And that's the thing you have to understand about most of the arguments about the origins of things. If there's an explanation that works without a supernatural element, then it simply makes more sense to use that explanation, since we can prove natural things exist. Secondly, the fine-tuning argument. The problem with this is you're making the assumption that life couldn't exist without the universe being the way it is right now. Unfortunately, that's kind of silly. Especially when you see the extreme conditions on Earth that still permit life. So there is at least a fairly wide gamut of conditions that permit life already. The only thing you can say is that we exist because the universe is the way it is. If it was different, there would either be something else or nothing. That doesn't actually prove anything.
Well, asking two questions that correlate with one another isn't too weird if you had ever taken a college class with essay-type questions. The fact is that the fine-tuning of the universe has to do with the explanation of how life came to be. Secondly, there is no explanation that works without God. If there is a natural explanation, I'd like to hear it. Lastly, it is no secret that in order for there to be life, a number of conditions need to be met. There must be H2O, for example. There must be a comfortable distance between a sun and the planet that supports life. There must be the right amount of gravity, a self-sustaining ecosystem, as well as a gamma of other conditions. Here I've listed some of the conditions that need to be met. But hey, let's just believe all of this came about from stardust.
The first organism would have been more akin to a machine. In fact, many of the cells in our bodies function like mechanisms. There's no drive behind them, they simply do whatever it is they do. The main reason the first ones would consume energy in whatever manner, and I think eating is not a good description for that, they would mostly do it to build copies of themselves, to self-replicate. The first organisms simply would not have been thinking, feeling creatures, just doing.
Here you explained the how question, but not the why question. Why do they do whatever it is they do? Why do or did they self-replicate? If you don't know, that's fine. But like the other answers, this one isn't sufficient.
Nothing came into existence randomly. That demonstrates your lack of understanding of evolution. Those first self-replicating organisms were not complicated. The first types of DNA would have been extremely simple. The complexity built up over time, over millions and millions of years. Small changes over a long time make big changes.
Well, first of all, DNA has always had the same function and has always been complicated. If it really was as simple as you state, we would have already created DNA from rocks and whatnot. The DNA structure is a complex script informing and directing the cell process. Another question that could be asked is what gave it its function?
There is evidence, tons of it in fact. Transitional fossils exist. All you have to do is go to Google, type transitional fossils, and you will see the difference. What can occur over millions of years. But the dogs are dogs and cats are cats. That argument is ridiculous. We have only been selectively breeding animals for a relatively short period of time on the geological scale, but we've already made many types of dogs so wildly different from each other that they actually have difficulty breeding. If we carried on, there would be a point where they would no longer be able to procreate, even though they have the same basic ancestor. Where's the thing that stops us from continuing this process? Where exactly does a dog cease to be a dog, and why couldn't we go past that? What mechanism prevents us from doing that?
Your environment? Well, there is simply no such evidence. There are no transitional fossils, real fossils that show our lineage going back to the time when our ancestors were so-called ocean dwellers. The adaptation mechanism simply allows us to survive our changing environment, but no drastic changes have occurred for us to have undergone such drastic transformations. You are right about one thing though. Your knowledge on the subject is very limited. I hope others will be better able to formulate more coherent arguments against my statements instead of going by what you say. Talk about someone who imposes claims without evidence. Anyways, guy, God bless.